In this video, I'm going to give you a blueprint to help heal your trauma. Now, if you're not familiar with trauma, I want to break it down for you in this video. If you are familiar with trauma, welcome, and I'm here to help you out. My name is Troy, if you and I haven't known it yet, and my goal is to help you 10x your results in life. Now, for me, I realized I was carrying a lot of trauma. I didn't know it at the moment. In fact, if you told me about healing, I wouldn't even know what that meant. I'm like, what do you mean heal? I'm not broken. I'm just a human. I'm just here. But I was busted up. I was carrying a lot of trauma. And when you're carrying trauma, you're gonna be stuck in energies of fight, or freeze. That's think of it like nature, right? That's what an animal does when they're being attacked. They're experiencing something traumatic. They either fight, they fight against it, they run, they flight, or they freeze, they play dead. And so we do the same type of thing when we're carrying lots of trauma energy. So I was essentially vacillating, moving between different frames of that kind of energy. And the reality was it caused me to be stuck in life. And so much of what I've learned, I want to share with you today because it really is transformational and I want to help you out with that. Now, the first thing that really I realized through this journey is that the energy of trauma gets held in the body. And so oftentimes when you're carrying trauma, it's like a stiff frame that you carry. That would make sense, right? If you're fight, or freeze as your frame, you're gonna be kind of tight. You're like, what's next? Uh-oh, gotta look out. And as I went into my body, and what does it mean to go into your body? It's literally doing an assessment. I'd feel into my body. I'd be like, wow, why am I tight here? What am I feeling? What am I holding on to? And I could feel all these things that I was essentially afraid of not being perfect, afraid of having another mistake happen, afraid of, losing value in life, not being respected, all these things, so many of them. I could feel that energy in my body. And as I'd feel that energy, I could connect it to a story. There's often a story around it. So the perfection thing, let's just look at that. I would feel why am I so tight? I want to be perfect in this moment right now. Well, why do I want to be perfect? Where did that come from? Where's the story, the correlation here? And the story would maybe be something from my childhood. I had a coach who was like, man, you got to be perfect. You got to do this. I had a coach, played football, played quarterback, and a coach who would pull my arm hairs out when I made it through an interception and stuff. So there's perfection, right? And I'd be like, man, it's okay to not be perfect. And those mistakes are how you learn, how you grow. And so I was able to let go of some of that energy in the body. And I'd literally have these physical releases. It'd be pop, pop, my joints release. I'm like, it's okay not to. I don't want to be perfect. Fuck, being perfect is exhausting, right? And so I was finding the story and then correlating it back to the body. Or I was finding it in the body, finding the story, and then back into the body. And so it's this back and forth energy of in the body and finding the story, right? To the psyche, right? Body, head here, back and forth, and they start to work together. What you're really building is a bridge between your head and your heart and your body, right? And so as I did this, I started getting my intuition back. How could you be intuitive? How could you feel your way into life if everything's been pushed up into your head because your mind is trying to look out and make sure you don't make any more mistakes, that you are always perfect, that you don't experience trauma? That's how trauma energy works, as it moves you up into your head. And so I was able to get back into my body and really uncover and loosen up my frame so much. But you find it through the body and you find the correlation with stories. Now the last step here, and be careful with this one, right? In the beginning, I was not ready for this. It'd been overwhelming if I activated the trigger. I'll explain what that means in a minute. But as you loosen up the frame, or maybe even starting to look for this, right? You look for the trigger, and if you can't find the trigger, sometimes you activate the trigger. The trigger is moments that just kind of trigger your trauma. It's oh, this is overwhelming. This reminds me of that situation. It might be a certain environment where you experience trauma. It might be a certain type of person. Maybe you got bullied as a kid and these people looked a certain way, right? And so, I've received that. I'm an athletic looking dude, played sports. You probably assume he's a jock. Maybe the jocks picked on you. I wasn't one of those dudes, I promise you that. In fact, I was quite the opposite. I learned martial arts because I wanted to protect myself and others, actually. But I've had people who treated me a certain way, and I know they're probably being triggered. I look like maybe somebody who bullied them in the past, right? And so as they can work through that, as I maybe can help them in that situation too, they let go of that trigger and they get more of an experience and they expand into life. Right? Now they get to make a connection with me, whereas before maybe they wouldn't have. And spread that out into all layers of your life, and look what's happening. You're either contracting, that's what trauma does, it contracts you, or you're expanding, and that's universal energy, is that expansion energy. So after a while, if you worked through this, the body, the stories, releasing the traumatic energy, changing those stories, reframing them, seeing them for what they were, that experience that took place had nothing to do with you, it had something to do with them. Or that experience that took place back then, you didn't have the tools or the resources to really work through it. And so that helps you reframe and change that energy. Come back into yourself. And after a while, you go activate the trigger. So literally, like, maybe there's social conditionings. You're afraid of social environments. Then you go in those environments. You're like, oh gosh, here it is. I feel tight, like I'm wanting to be perfect. My voice is shrinking up. I'm feeling silly. And then you kind of sit with that energy and you go, okay, what's going on there? What am I experiencing? Why do I feel this way? And I can go back into these stories and reframe them. And so you're literally doing like this back and forth energy of reframing stories and creating an actual reality. Because your brain is designed for survival. It's very primitive, right? It's designed to fit into the group. And if you did things in the group that made you stand out, you got thrown out. So your brain wants to play small, wants to play safe. But that ain't your reality anymore. And in fact, that reality is probably holding you back in life. So you activate the triggers because you want to expand. Where are my stuck points still, right? What am I holding in my body? Where am I tight and stiff? And what are the stories that are creating that? And you change these stories, you upgrade your operating system. And so when I go back to that word I talked about in the beginning, healing, actually what you're doing is you're upgrading yourself. You're upgrading the operating system so that you can experience a whole different reality. Hope you found this valuable. Understanding trauma has been something that's so personal to me, has helped me so much, and I want to see it help you. I believe that we all carry so much trauma. And if we could just work on this, we could work on it together, it's really powerful. It's okay to be vulnerable. Like, that's a strength. Share your experiences, share your wounds. That's a universal language. We all understand that. So I look forward to meeting you in person someday. I make these for you. Until next time, peace.